They buried it inside temples and called it a B sound, so no one would recognize what it truly was, a biological override switch for the human nervous system. The Bhramari Breathing Technique was never just a spiritual chant. It was a precision tool for shutting down mental overactivity and forcing the brain into sleep. And in a world that profits from your exhaustion, that kind of self-regulation is dangerous. You were not designed to lie awake at 2:17 a.m. with your heart slightly elevated and your thoughts racing like a courtroom trial that never ends. Yet that has become normal. Blue light hits your retina late into the night. Cortisol, the very hormone meant to wake you, lingers after sunset. Your amygdala stays alert, scanning for threats that do not exist, and you call it stress. But it is deeper than stress. It is nervous system dysregulation. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Insomnia is not a sleep disorder. It is a hyperarousal disorder. Your brain does not know how to power down. Your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight circuitry, remains partially activated even when your body is horizontal. That is why you feel tired, but wired. That is why melatonin sometimes fails. Because the root problem is not darkness, it is safety. Your brain does not feel safe enough to let go. Ancient Indian practitioners discovered something radical. A specific internal vibration, produced through controlled humming, could directly stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. Not symbolically, mechanically. They realized that sound, when generated inside the skull, could influence the vagus nerve and quiet the alarm centers of the brain. This was not superstition. It was early neuroregulation. A ritual disguised as devotion, a sound that dissolved internal noise. And now, you stand at a decision point. Continue negotiating with sleepless nights, or learn the mechanism they quietly preserved. Let me expose the real cost of what you are experiencing, because until you understand the stake, you will underestimate the solution. Chronic sleep disruption is not just about feeling tired. It is a progressive erosion of your cognitive and hormonal architecture. Every night, your brain fails to enter deep restorative cycles. Your cortisol rhythm becomes distorted. Nighttime cortisol remains elevated when it should be falling. That single disruption interferes with growth hormone release, tissue repair, memory consolidation, and emotional recalibration. You may think you are functioning. You go to work. You answer messages. You perform. But beneath that surface competence, your nervous system is deteriorating in small, measurable ways. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and impulse control, becomes less efficient. The amygdala becomes more reactive. Minor stressors feel amplified. You snap faster. You worry more. You recover slower. And the next night, your brain remembers that tension and stays alert again. A vicious loop forms. This is hyperarousal conditioning. Your brain begins to associate nighttime with frustration. The bed becomes a battleground. Even before you lie down, your body anticipates difficulty. Heart rate subtly rises. Breathing becomes shallow. Microtension appears in the jaw and shoulders. You do not notice it consciously, but your autonomic system does. And here is what makes it dangerous. When the sympathetic nervous system dominates for too long, inflammatory markers increase. Insulin sensitivity can decrease. Mood stability weakens. Over months and years, poor sleep compounds into metabolic dysfunction and emotional volatility. You blame aging. You blame workload. You rarely blame autonomic imbalance. This is why superficial solutions fail. Supplements may sedate. Alcohol may dull awareness. But neither teaches your nervous system how to deactivate itself. They suppress symptoms, while leaving the circuitry unchanged. What you need is not sedation. You need regulation. You need a direct pathway to tell your brain, with authority, that the threat is over. And that pathway exists inside your own physiology. Now we enter the mechanism, the part ancient teachers described in metaphor, but modern neuroscience can map with precision. When you perform Bhramari, you create a sustained humming vibration that stimulates branches of the vagus nerve running through the throat and inner ear. The vagus nerve is the primary communication highway of your parasympathetic nervous system. It is the brake pedal of your stress response. Most people never consciously engage it. When you inhale through the nose and exhale with a long, steady hum, several processes activate simultaneously. First, the extended exhalation itself increases vagal tone. Long exhalations signal safety to the brainstem. Heart rate begins to slow. Blood pressure subtly stabilizes. The sympathetic system reduces its output. That is the first layer. Second, the humming dramatically increases nitric oxide production in the nasal sinuses. Nitric oxide is not just a gas. It is a signaling molecule that dilates blood vessels and enhances oxygen delivery to neural tissue. Higher nitric oxide levels improve cerebral blood flow and help synchronize neural firing. This is why the vibration must be nasal and resonant. Quiet exhaling will not produce the same biochemical shift. Third, the vibration influences brainwave activity. When your mind is racing, you are operating in high-frequency beta waves. Beta is analytical, alert, defensive. But sleep onset requires a transition into slower alpha and then theta waves. The repetitive humming acts as a rhythmic entrainment signal. It guides the brain towards slower frequencies. Like a metronome slowing a chaotic orchestra, it imposes order. There is also a neurotransmitter effect. Increased vagal activation supports GABA activity. GABA is your primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. When GABA levels rise, neural firing quiets. Thoughts lose intensity. Emotional charge softens. The amygdala reduces its threat signaling. This is not mystical sedation. It is coordinated neurophysiology. You are stimulating the exact pathways pharmaceutical sedatives attempt to manipulate, but you are doing it through mechanical resonance rather than chemical force. When you understand this, sleep stops being a mystery. It becomes a predictable outcome of correct neural signaling. Now precision becomes everything. If you perform Bhramari casually, you will get partial results. If you perform it with exactness, you will feel the nervous system shift in real time. Timing matters. Environment matters. Posture matters. This is a protocol, not a suggestion. Begin 30 minutes before you intend to sleep. Dim the lights. No screens. No overhead glare. Your brain must already sense the approach of night. Sit upright on your bed or on the floor, with your spine straight but relaxed. Chin slightly tucked, shoulders loose. Place the tongue gently against the roof of the mouth, just behind the upper teeth. This subtle contact enhances cranial resonance and stabilizes jaw tension. Raise your hands into Shanmukhi Mudra. Gently close the cartilage of your ears with your thumbs. Rest your index fingers above the eyebrows, middle fingers lightly over closed eyelids. Ring fingers along the sides of the nose without blocking airflow, and little fingers near the corners of the mouth. This position reduces external sensory input and directs awareness inward. Inhale slowly through the nose for a count of 4. The breath expands into the diaphragm, not the chest. Then exhale with a deep, steady humming sound. Low-pitched, smooth, continuous. The exhale should last at least 8 seconds, ideally 10 to 12 without strain. Feel the vibration inside the skull, especially behind the forehead, and around the nasal cavity. That internal resonance is critical. Complete 10 cycles. Rest for 30 seconds, breathing normally through the nose. Then perform another 10 cycles. No more than 20 total in the first week. After finishing, lie down immediately. Do not check your phone. Do not speak. Transition directly into sleep. Consistency is the training stimulus. Perform this every night for 7 consecutive nights. The repetition conditions your nervous system to associate the humming vibration with safety and release. Now let us talk about measurable change, because transformation without markers becomes belief instead of evidence. The first night you practice correctly, you may notice that sleep arrives faster. Perhaps only 5 or 10 minutes faster, but faster. Your internal dialogue softens sooner. The heaviness behind your eyes deepens more quickly. If you were tracking your heart rate, you would likely see it drop earlier in the night. That early decline is parasympathetic activation taking hold. By the third night, the pattern strengthens. Your nervous system begins to anticipate the ritual. The moment you close your ears and begin humming, your body recognizes the sequence. Cortisol release late at night starts flattening. Microtension in the jaw and shoulders reduces more quickly. If you wake during the night, returning to sleep requires less struggle. The spiral of rumination weakens. By the 7th night, measurable shifts become more consistent. Sleep onset latency often decreases significantly compared to baseline. Heart rate variability trends upward, indicating improved vagal tone. REM cycles stabilize because you're no longer entering sleep from a hyper-aroused state. Morning clarity improves. Emotional reactivity during the day softens. You respond more deliberately instead of reacting impulsively. At the 21-day mark, deeper adaptation occurs. Neuroplastic changes reinforce parasympathetic dominance. Your baseline stress threshold rises. Situations that once triggered racing thoughts now produce manageable awareness. Nighttime feels less threatening. The bed no longer carries anticipation of struggle. It becomes associated with regulation and release. This is cumulative biology. Repetition strengthens neural pathways. The vagus nerve becomes more responsive. Hormonal rhythms stabilize. Sleep transitions become smoother because your brain trusts the descent. These are not miracles. They are predictable outcomes of correct autonomic training. Now the final confrontation. Knowledge without action changes nothing. You can understand vagal tone, nitric oxide, GABA, theta waves. You can nod in agreement and still remain trapped in the same restless nights. Because the true barrier is not complexity. It is consistency. Most people will try this for 2 nights and stop. The mind will whisper that it is unnecessary, that you are too tired, that you will start again tomorrow, but that whisper is the same circuitry that keeps you overstimulated. Your nervous system has adapted to chaos. Silence feels unfamiliar. Slowing down feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is not failure. It is recalibration. You must treat the next 7 nights as a neurological experiment. Non-negotiable. 30 minutes protected. 2 rounds of 10 cycles. Direct transition to bed. No phone afterward. No external stimulation. This is the training window. Each repetition reinforces a safety signal inside your brainstem. Each vibration strengthens parasympathetic access. By night 7, you will have data from your own body. You will know whether sleep latency shortened, whether nighttime awakenings decreased, whether mornings feel clearer. That evidence is more powerful than any external opinion. And here is the deeper shift. When you realize you can influence your nervous system deliberately, you stop feeling helpless. Sleep stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something you initiate. That shift extends beyond the bedroom. Emotional regulation improves. Stress recovery accelerates. You begin to trust your internal control again. The ancient practitioners were not mystics chasing fantasy. They were engineers of consciousness, using breath and vibration as tools. The mechanism is now in your hands. The only remaining variable is your commitment. 7 nights, precision. No excuses. Reclaim your biology,